Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. We are 1 year old for this episode. Happy birthday us, Rick. Happy birthday. 1 year old. And we are discussing documentaries. I'm mixing it up, kid.
I like the old formula. Do you know what? I just wish the audience could have seen the chats we were having a second before you went on, and in the minute. So I don't know if like this may be a bit inside of baseball, but like when you start a recording on this, we have to wait 10 seconds. It's something to do with the editing. The guy's a bit of an OCD freak with it. So you wait 10 seconds of silence and then you talk. So we have a very serious chat, 10 seconds, and then Matt goes straight into happy birthday to. He's even doing the arms. He's the most adorable. I want every conversation like us to start like that.
That's because I'm a professional, Rick. Right, today for our annual episode, that's what this is going to be. I asked Rick to pick something that would complement or is similar in some respects to episode 1, which is what we all got started with, which was the Grizzly Man's Timothy Treadwell. I was asked after someone like that guy. And Rick is not known to work hard, but when he does put the effort in, it shows, because Rick has chosen my Amityville Horror. And, mate, you've nailed it. You have nailed it.
I could never tell what you're going to say, Matt. I honestly can't.
Wow, man. Wow. I'm watching this going, fucking hell, it's like Timothy Treadwell too.
there is some fucking delusion in this one, isn't there?
Well, is there? Is there? Well, let's read the blurb so everyone knows what we're talking about, and then we'll get into it.
We will put a YouTube link with this one, because that's where we found it. There is a few things on the Amityville. You may have heard of. We'll get into it. Yeah.
So it's called My Amityville Horror from the year 2012. Provided was YouTube, and we'll, as Rick said, put the link in the show notes. I didn't even need to say that, but it's written in the paper, so I need to say it. The director was Eric Walter. The money, this is weird on the money, because the money's been missing in the last few episodes. The money is $205,000. And then it had in brackets, and I've never seen this before, estimated. So that sounds dodgy. And the accolades, and this is, I went down a rabbit hole with the accolades. It's one nominee, and that was for the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards for Best Documentary. And just so you know, the winner on that one, Rick, was Beast Wishes, which I started watching the trailers for and started reading about, and it looks awesome. And it's about these two sci-fi archivists.
Archivists?
Yeah, archivists, sorry. That's my spelling. Yeah, and they've kept all the archive material. So every prop that's ever been in a movie, they'll try and track it down, and they keep it.
Wow.
It looks, and that's what won. That looks fascinating. So we'll do that another time.
Do you know what? If what Daniel Lutz is saying is true, you'd be fucking gutted to the guy. And this is the claw
Exactly.
that Freddy Krueger used in number 7.
That's what the film is. It's that. I don't think we'll do it on here, but we'll watch it just for fun. And here's the blurb on My Amityville Horror. For the first time in 35 years, Daniel Lutz recounts his version of the infamous Amityville haunting that terrified his family in 1975. George and Kathleen Lutz's story went on to inspire a best-selling novel, and the subsequent films have continued to fascinate audiences today. This documentary reveals the horror behind growing up as part of a world-famous haunting, and, while Daniel's facts may be others' fiction, the psychological scars he carries are indisputable. Mate, kick us off, because I must admit, this documentary ticked all the boxes, and even though I fell asleep for 6 minutes of it, it was still like, oh my fucking good God.
Well, first off, this is the year anniversary one, and there's one or two documentaries, because the problem is the big ones that I'm a huge fan of tend to be series.
Yeah.
So we're coming thin on the ground of shit that I've seen before that I know we can do in one episode. So the one that was kind of the fine bottle of wine that I was going to choose was going to be the very famous Dear Zachary. But we've both got quite a busy fucking week this week and we don't need to start it.
Isn't that the most miserable documentary going?
It's one of the most heartfelt. I'm not going to give any spoilers to it, because if someone tells you something's the worst or the best or something, it never lives up to anything.
Yes,
it's just a very engaging story, and it kind of resonates with people. That's the best way to describe Dear Zachary without giving too much away.
But where did you hear about this one then? Why did you?
Well, the Amityville Horror is a famous horror movie. I know you're not into your horror, but you would have seen The Simpsons, in which the house looks like it has eyes. I know you'd have that as a reference point. It's like the archetypal haunted house movie for the last 50 years. And I remember seeing bits and bobs about behind the truth to it. So the true story to the Amityville Horror that I'd seen previously was, I think, 60s or 70s. Ronnie DeFeo murders his entire family.
Yes.
There is some strange evidence, like, for instance, there was no silencer on the gun used, but no one got out of bed when 6 gunshots were going. He murdered them all in their beds. There was no sign of a struggle, anything like that. When he was caught, he claimed the devil made him do it.
Yeah.
Then, where the story picks up, because unfortunately in America, if someone's shooting their entire family, not enough to really make the story pop. So what happens is, a bunch of years later, family buys the house, cut price because no one wants to move into the murder house.
Yeah, 88 grand.
88 grand, and when you see what it was, I mean, 88 grand in the 70s, you'll know better than me. What's that translate as today?
That's that's still a lot of money.
I was going to say, because it's got boathouses on the river.
Yeah.
It's like...
And it's on Long Island, right? So
in Long
it's
Island,
in New York. Yeah. Long Island's New York, right? You can get to Manhattan in an hour, so I'm saying it's New York. I always get confused by New York and the state of New York, but I'm sure some Americans can correct me.
Yeah, so... as I know, so where the movies of the Amityville Horror picks up is the family that buy this house.
Right.
And I'd seen those movies. I watched the Ryan Reynolds one that came out years ago when I was like 15, 16, 17, something like that. And then I remember seeing a thing about, the myth of Amityville. And what happened is George Lutz, who Ryan Reynolds plays his character in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds plays George Lutz.
Well as Robert Durst?
No,
that's the other Ryan, isn't
Gosling.
It? That's
Ryan Gosling.
Get me Ryans mixed up.
Yeah. And so basically the story behind that is he befriended the local town sheriff, asked the details of the murder, and then concocted these stories to fit that narrative. For instance, like the rooms in which such and such were murdered, these things happened, if that makes sense to you. And I'd heard that, and I'd wanted to find a documentary that spanned across that, because they went on book tours, sold the movie rights,
they did.
All things like that, the Lutz family. This isn't that. I saw the trailer to it, and they lean into that stuff on the trailer, but this isn't that. This is the story of Daniel Lutz, the child of the family, the stepson.
He was the stepson of George, but Kathleen, his mum, was that was his real mum. Yeah.
And it's about him in his modern day, him telling his story. Yeah. That is what this one is. So I was mistaken, but this one, not a bad watch.
And if you liked the Grizzly Man, Timothy Treadwell type character, who I think I'm just going to have to watch that again, right? Because it's been a year. This guy is, let me choose my words very carefully in case he ever visits England and makes his way to Kent. This guy is...
I'm just going to tell him my address in case he ever has a problem with what I say.
This guy is a little intense, and then initially it's really off-putting. You genuinely are, and because it's a documentary, it's real, right? The director, Eric, is talking to him, and you're like, fucking hell, man, you're intense. And then he gets even more intenser, and then Jesus. And then it just keeps.
That's the documentary, basically.
Yeah, it's basically it's two talking heads, right? It's him and the odd one. Yeah. And fucking hell, he talks and we keep seeing him being interviewed by a psychoanalyst and
psychologist.
It was a psychologist. I thought that. I wrote that down. I don't know why I said
the lady.
Susan Bartle is her name, and he says to her, "Well, what's your most traumatic experience? Because I need to know that to see if you can analyze me. Can you analyze me? Well, I need to know what you've been through. Can you relate to my experience of being possessed?" You're like, fucking hell, he's that kid.
In my mind, right, since I'd seen the stuff about how they've cashed in on this story, and it's all pretty, it was kind of laid bare to me that it's a hoodwink. And they were very fortunate in the fact that the house's windows at the top looked like it had eyes that were looking at you.
Yeah.
That is kind of like the strangest hook, but this is America's Haunted House, and you could have a picture of this house that looked creepy.
And the fact that
I'm kind of
there was a real life murder in it. That does
and you got that as a backdrop as well. But I was watching it with it. Is he trying to kind of cash in on this legend because he wouldn't have seen a whole heap of that money because his dad or his stepfather-in-law, whatever, their stepdad would have signed away his rights and he would have been entitled to nothing.
Well, he was 10, right? Yeah, he was 10 when
he was 10 years old when this story happened. But I don't think he was. I think he's fucked up.
Well, we'll get to that because halfway.
And he's sitting there and he's so oppositional. Like when he goes to see the psychoanalyst, and she's asking him because, and I'm like I say, I wanted you to just know I'm watching this with. Can I spot the lie? Do you know what I mean with that? Can I see the in between what he's trying to project to what he actually is? Is he trying to? And the psychoanalyst starts asking him softball questions like, "Oh, so how did you feel?" And he's like, "Can I just stop you right there?" Yeah. Okay, because I need to know what your biggest trauma is before I do this. And I can't help but put this up against, if you think back to Abducted in Plain Sight.
Yep.
And she's talking about her trauma of everything that poor fucking lass went through as a kid. And she's not, well, what's happened to you? Before I tell you fucking anything, before you judge, like he is
almost spoiling for a fight, and
with every sentence,
sentence he is. And the thing is, it amps up throughout the documentary. It's a very well made documentary, but
it's got some weird moments. So the first one, they sit down with the cassette player and they play back some of his old interviews to him, and you have things like, I was flung up the stairs. The bed was rattling and you couldn't stop it from rattling. And then he goes, I'm tired now. I don't want to talk about it. And that for me was always an indicator of, all right, I've told the thing word for word. I don't want any other questions. Shut the fuck up. And it just cuts to him in sunglasses playing an electric guitar. That just cracked me up. He's just thrashing along like Bill and Ted.
His stepdad, George, in the newspaper clippings and every picture you see of him, even when he's on the Merv Griffin show. How cool was that? Merv Griffin, friend of the show. He looks like Bill Bryson. You know the author? No, that's sorry. He's.
I like the fact you didn't even look for an answer.
He ran the Keep Britain Tidy campaign. Robert Redford played him in a film of one of his books. He's like one of the best authors in Britain. He's a American guy from Iowa.
Oh.
Anyway, he looks exactly like him. And I thought, well, and that George, effectively, you're like, well, is he a con man? Or was his family really possessed by demons? And then I'm looking at him going, but he looks like Bill Bryson. Bill Bryson is the most level-headed, intelligent person you could ever hope to meet. He wrote a book called The Short History of Nearly Everything, where he lists a short history of almost everything that's ever existed. And it's the most fascinating book.
So back up. So what's this got to do with Bill Bryson?
Well, this guy looks like Bill Bryson. So I'm like, I was just conflicted.
Oh, sorry. I thought there was a leap there.
No, I was putting the personality of Bill Bryson onto the stepdad George, who, let's face it, the whole film is about kicking the shit out of George.
Yeah. Because Daniel does some of these little things that I don't know what these like not hero stories, but trying to insinuate some badass behavior. When it's just like, so how are you in school? Daniel goes, well, I was enrolled in a school. My mom thought I was going to a school. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I was in a house where fucking Indian burial grounds was coming up and grabbing us, like, I never used to go to science. What else you want to know? The stories around us, like, Matt, the day your parachute didn't open, you don't talk about what you had to fucking, to drink the night before. Like, those parts of a story shrink in your mind and shrivel and go, and you go, and then the parachute, I was pulling at it. I remember that.
And the reason he's got the tapes, because there's a woman called Laura Didio who she was a reporter at the time for Channel 5, and she has connections in the psychic community. So she went and interviewed the family, and she pushed the story along, right?
So 1 second, sorry. I'm looking again at the aspect, because I think it's going to go down the route of this is all a hoax to make the horror franchise. So
they don't even use that word.
At no point, and you can tell why towards the end.
Yeah.
So when the Lutz family leaves the house after living there for 28 days, they lived there 28 days, then left. They had a bunch of people trying to get the story, and sorry, it's Didio. What's her name? Laura.
Laura Didio. Yeah.
So Laura says, and I got the exclusive because I reached out and I said I have connections in the paranormal community. I'm like, that's the cunt I want telling my story. All right, that's the one. Get her down. I want the one with the psychic friends, not these people. It's the scientists. Get her. You can have the exclusive.
I don't want people who are going to use empirical evidence. I don't want people who are going to investigate.
I don't want people who are going to work out that the house got a foreclosure on it.
Who you going to call? Ghostbusters. That's who you're going to call.
Yeah. I want the people that can make money if this story's true. That's who I want to tell my story. The ones that have a fucking lottery ticket on their hands, if that's the case.
But the whole thing is hanging on Daniel and his behaviour. And there is a cockiness to him. And all I kept thinking was, I don't like you, I don't like you, I don't like you. That cockiness. And almost like, I'm like, are you lying? Are you lying? And then I'm thinking, hang on, don't we hate in others what we see in ourselves? I'm like, shit. Am I like him? Fuck it, man.
You're not, but I know plenty like it where like every story,
so annoying.
They have to, just before I tell you, just remember that I am actually a badass, So he comes up to me and says this, and I'm like, well, fuck no. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you, sir. This is how this goes. Because then you start to hear what George Lutz, the stepfather, was like to them growing up. And you hear stories of them beating the fuck out of them with wooden spoons and making them march around because George Lutz is ex-Marine.
Military. Yeah. And he's drill sergeant in the kids. And when he took on the kids, and this is a tell straight away, right? Sets the alarm bells ringing. He took on the kids. And he said, the only way I'm going to marry you is if everybody takes my name so that everyone knows they all belong to me. They're my possessions. That's not how kids work, but George.
There was a thing, and I'm not sure if I misheard it, where he said there was a meeting with the mother and the biological father.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I took it the other way, but I think from what we heard about George Lutz, that's definitely the case. But I took it as in the dad had said, you can only marry my wife if the kids change their names as well.
I don't want nothing to do with that little kid.
Because isn't it? I mean, I'm quoting 2.5 Men here, but I think you have to stop. You get to stop paying alimony if they remarry.
Oh, really?
And I thought it could be a little thing like that because you don't hear about their dad again.
No, God, no. Yeah, but he and he says, right, so they move into this house.
Oh, sorry, the last quote on that that's worth saying is it goes, from that point on, I try to destroy this guy's world.
Yeah. And that's why I'm going to be reasonably nice to him, just in case he ever hears this episode and comes over. And I'm moving. I'm not going to live in Kent anymore.
Yeah.
I'll find you, Rick. I'll find you. Don't you worry. I'll be online. So they move into this house, and he said, yeah, and Father Ray was asked over as the day we were moving in to bless the house. Okay, all right, fair enough. That's a weird.
This is in the movies. These bits are
right,
in all the movies as well.
And he is in. I've written here. He is intense. He is proper, scarily intense. And then he says, and she said, yeah, and your stepdad died. And he went, I can't help but smile that my stepdad's dead. And she went, really? He went, well, I tried to kill him over 50 times. What have you got, a spreadsheet? Didn't work. He got all scientific with it. Failed. Didn't work.
Do you know what?
Next method.
He does look like the brain from Pinky and the Brain. So it's like, well, Daniel, what are we going to do this evening? Same thing we do every evening.
And people know him. Now, I always get... Do you know what's always upset me, right, in comedy is when you meet a character act and you're like, what's your name? And it's like, oh, I'm Billy Smith. You know, all right, Billy, and you're chatting away. And then they go on stage and they're like Terry Gubbins. And you're like, well, what's your name? And they're like, well, actually, my real name's John. And you're like, hang on, you gave me a name when I met you. You've got a different name on stage, and you've got a name here. What are you afraid of? So he's got 3 different names because of the different characters in the films. So he absorbs them. This kid. Do you know the actress Sally Field? Right, she did a film called Sybil, and it was a true story about a woman who had multiple personalities, and we were forced to watch it as children in school, and it was brutal. Now, this is how brutal it was. You know them things you can put in a cigarette lighter in a car, and then you can put it in your cup, and it warms up a cup of coffee? Her mum inserted one of those inside her, right? And this is a true story, and it's fucking brutal. We were made to watch that. And he reminded me of her and the different personalities and how they were tortured as kids and how they had to create these personalities to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I see that because it's an abusive parent, man.
Yeah.
Fucks you up.
Because this George sounds abusive, right? And because he was in the military, what do they do in the military? They break you down. And he's trying to do this. And the kid was 10. He's trying to, you know.
Exactly. You do have to remember he's 10 years old when he's talking about this stuff. And he's like, I protect my mum and stuff like that. It's,
which is what you say as a 10-year-old, isn't it?
What I think they said on Out for Blood in Silicon Valley, the Holmes,
Elizabeth Holmes. Well remembered.
When they say, is this a constructed reality in her mind and she doesn't know she's lying?
Yes. Yeah.
I think she believes she's in the right. And I see, like, there is... Because he's not fucking Daniel Day-Lewis. This is convincing, the stuff he's saying.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also aspects where it becomes poking at the truth, where he gets fucking prickly later on.
Yeah.
Like,
yes, yeah.
But so a little few things. So they go into a bit more about the Amityville thing. So these are the kind of things that happen, and these are the ones highlighted within like the movies, the Simpsons episodes, the books, all that stuff. All the parodies. This comes from it. So there'll be like 500 flies in a room in December. And then he tells a story about how he goes and kills all the flies, brings his mum up to show them, and there's no flies there, and there's no newspaper there anymore.
Yeah.
Cold spots in the house, red eyes, which he described as a cartoon pig with teeth,
Laser
jolting
eyes.
Sounds. And he also says that he was opening a window, and then something closed the window on his hands, mushing his hands, and his hands were instantly better.
Yep. It was just weird.
Now, all of those things, I think, could be a child trying to come to terms with domestic abuse.
Yes, absolutely.
I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly
from what's described as George Lutz and what other people describe him as, because you don't know what could set him off. Smashing a kid's hands into a window seems not beyond the pale of reality.
But it also seems not beyond the pale of reality that a kid would trap his fingers in a window, right?
Yeah.
Bear in mind, no word of a lie. I shut my penis in our French doors the other day by mistake because of the way. Yeah, it's easily done, and I'm a 50-year-old bloke, and it's not like I'm blessed, Rick. So it's just You can see how someone, just hurts
Where do your French doors come out at? Is that like conservatory doors?
into the garden. I wasn't naked. I was just doing this thing, and I just caught me knob, and it just it hurt. It really hurt. So it's not.
Would you take a lie detector on that?
Yes, I would.
That's all I need to know. That's all I need to know.
We'll post pictures in the Facebook group. It'll be okay.
I didn't get too many likes, that picture of Matt's hip operation, for some reason.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it? And the fact that some rooms are colder than others. Like, I've just say if I lived in a house in Kent, I've got rooms like that.
Mm.
That's not.
And again, it's a traumatized child's mind. Not only that, it is a reinforced narrative.
Of course, because they've made films about the whole thing.
They've
right?
made films, but they put that story out. They went on TV and said all this shit.
Yes, Merv Griffin. Damn you, Merv. And then he knows, and he says this. He goes, "Look, I know I was possessed. The spirit of something passed right through me. And if I was asked to describe it, it's like numbness after being electric shocked." Well, how the fuck would you know what that's like, Daniel? Oh, that's right, your dad, your stepdad. Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, it's just, and the more you watch it and you think, you're Timothy Treadwell. Oh, no, you're not. You're just an abused little boy. Oh, well, maybe Timothy Treadwell was, and we've been mean to him for no reason. We got to go back. We got to scrap that episode. I've got survivor's guilt.
Because this movie's had a little bit of an impact on me, just because of the iconography of haunted houses.
Right.
So, like, when we moved into our last place in London, there was a room Ari just barked in, and me and my mate are like, "Yeah, we're moving. This is." I'm not even going to look at the ceiling right now. I know there's nothing there. There is nothing there. I'm going to leave the room right now. And when I was watching this, and they're going through the archetypes of the movie, I hear this noise like a. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And then Kate looks up, and I'm like, you hear that as well? She's like, yeah, I heard that as well. And then I'm like, all right, that's weird. No one comes in our fucking garden because we've got the dog, and we're very antisocial. People have to give us 3 weeks' notice if they're fucking coming around. Trust me, ask any fucking friend. They need a fucking written permission
family.
from the consulate.
Yeah.
A fucking letter from the consulate to fucking come round.
Yeah.
And I hear it again, and now it seems now Ari's up. Ari's up and his fucking tail's wagging me dog, and he's like, and he's doing his grunt like, who's there? And I'm trying to get this done in time because we are close to the wire on Monday night. We're going away, and Matt said 8:30, and if Matt's doing a 8:30 recording, you better believe he's asleep by 9:15. So we need to get this shit done quickly.
No word of a lie. I went to bed last night at 9:45.
Exactly,
I was
right.
Knackered.
So I'm trying to act like I don't think someone's in our back fucking garden. And our lass gets up with the dog, right? And there's no one in the garden. They come down. We hear it again when they sit down. And I'm like, all right. And I hear it again. I went, oh. There's a little cupboard under the stairs, and we got like a assortment of dog treats in a box. And I couldn't be asked to take them out of the box, so I just lashed it in the cupboard. And what it is, it's slowly sliding down the other things in that cupboard.
But for a moment there, you're thinking your house is possessed.
We almost moved in. My mother sold the story and then just gaslit into believing that was the truth.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I believe in none of that nonsense. But I get frightened just like I did when I was a kid and now and again in the dark. And it's ridiculous. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in God, the devil, monster, anything, right? But now and again in the dark, I'm like, what the fuck was that? Because you don't know.
My second year of university, my finances crashed. All right. I barely survived halls of residence, but the second year is when I was not living correctly. Here's how bad it, like, I came home for the summer. I couldn't adapt to being around me folks again, which I wish I remembered that a few months back. So I went back down to uni first. So I'm the first one in the house. No one's coming. Everyone's went and got summer jobs. I'm just in this house on my own. And I didn't have a light bulb. The only light bulb that was in one of the cupboards was a red light bulb. So like, when you turn that on at night,
Roxanne!
I know. I look like it's from the window it looks like a brothel, but inside it looks like hell. I swear to God, the amount of women I scared out of that room by going, yeah, coming in. Don't put the light. Oh shit, they put the light on. But so you'd be in your bed at night alone in this house, right? And you start to go. Everyone's been. You go a little bit crazy being on your fucking own, and this is why lockdown was a piece of piss for me, because I did this kind of stuff, and it must have been the water boiler, but it just sounded like something was walking up the stairs. And in your mind,
terrifying.
You just go through different things in your mind, and it'll be like a breeze, and like the fucking bathroom door would just creak slightly with the wind, and you're like, and you're like, right, well, if it's someone is in here, they're gonna have to look like dicks and open the door. All right, I'm not walking out so they can jump out on us. Like, I'm not putting the red light on. That's for fucking sure. Like,
this is what I don't like about my 2 new cats, because if I have a night terror, my old cat used to know that and used to come in and like get me back to sleep. These 2, I don't know, they're noobs, right? They're newbies. They haven't got a clue what's going on. All they hear is me screaming and they're running away.
I love the idea that your missus is next to you and like, the cat's got this one. So the cat's having to force a wallet into Matt's mouth. He's thrashing like a toddler. Right.
So he knows he was possessed, right? And then they interviewed, so the Channel 5 people who were doing a story on it decide to spend the night to check out the authenticity of the It's Haunted claims.
And these guys are like the South Park characters they take the piss out of when they're going, like, each one of them goes into a different room, goes, ooh, I feel something here.
Yeah. And here's what I don't get, right? They said, oh, it's in the sewing room. That's where it's strongest. So what you're saying is somebody was murdered. Their spirit doesn't go to where it's meant to go to. It stays and hangs around, but it can only be in the sewing room. What? So what? It doesn't go to heaven or hell as you claim it should. It hangs around. It becomes a demon as long as you're in the sewing room. What?
There's a great Bill Burr.
What, is there a clause here that the demon has to sign up to? You can be a demon. There's a couple of drawbacks. Your working space is very small, but you can make all the clothes you want.
It's an interesting point, that, because if you look at it logistically, if ghosts existed, you wouldn't actually be able to move for them.
Yeah,
because if you think of the amount of people that's died,
that
would be everything. That could actually be contributing to greenhouse gases. That could.
If we could get them to vote, imagine what way we could swing it. There's a great YouTube video on that. What the world would be like if, if everyone who's ever been born would come back again. It's not as many as you'd like to think.
Fair enough.
But that has just made me think of this. It's one of my favourite YouTube channels, and then we will get on with this documentary. It's called Metal Ball Studios.
Oh, you've mentioned Metal Ball Studios.
And they do comparisons. And the one I watched the other day was comparisons of which country drinks the most or uses the most water every day.
Right.
And they do it in such a great graphical format. It's well worth watching on YouTube if you get a chance. Anyway, Channel 5.
There's a moment, where the reporter, Laura, says to him in this dingy little room where they've cornered him, so he has to keep talking instead of wandering off and playing the fucking guitar. This is, you've said that he's the line where he says he's happy that George Lutz is dead.
Yeah.
And because he says, I have to smile every time you say that. And the reporter went, oh, is he here? All right, no, I'm glad he's dead. All right, fair enough.
Now, at this point, right, so my missus walked in and she's a social worker. So she stopped, looked at it, and she went, is it scary? Because I don't like horrors. I won't watch horrors.
She had a very funny comment about that, when you were on the phone.
And
He rarely intercedes in our phone calls, but when
Yes.
she does, it's to cut my sneeze out in an instant.
And she's very good at it. But she popped in and she went, "What's going on here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to explain this whole thing." And I said, "I think he's got PTSD." And she watched it and she went, "The director of this, the people making the film, are being irresponsible. They're not looking after this guy's mental health needs. This is disgraceful." And she started getting into it. And I was like, "Can I stop you there? Because we're on a fucking deadline. I really want to hear about this. But you know how antsy I get because I have to edit. Can you give all this stuff later?" But yeah, she's the same as me. She's like, "Look, this guy is damaged." And and they were triggering this guy, right? Because they just kept poking the bear.
But I think this was his doing this show.
What? Well, that... Okay, that doesn't make it any better. Because everyone else went, "Well, okay, we'll do it with you then, Daniel."
That's true. That's true. But it seems very catered to him. They have the childhood reporter with him. Then
you know who the exec producer was, don't you?
Was it him?
No, it was her.
So it might be her thing. Oh shit! Nah, it's her thing then.
Yeah,
that's
Laura Didio. It's one of the exec producers.
Laura Didio. That makes a bit of sense because you can tell when she's done her last interview with him because she starts saying some things that he wouldn't have liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then this is the bit. Like I said, I fell asleep for about 6 minutes, and we're on a time thing, so I couldn't come back to it. But there was suddenly a purple lady appeared. And was she the psychic? The one with Jesus's cross.
Oh my God! Right. So this scene.
This
is why.
That's the bit I didn't get. That's the bit I want to ask you about. Who the fuck was she?
This is where you need an everyman like Louis Theroux in the room. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Because she comes in and she is dressed like a psychic. She has 2 beehives in a diagonal coming out of her head, and her eyebrows are like tents. Like if you're to draw a tent crudely, it's that triangle. So she constantly looks surprised or intrigued. And she's very old now, but she was one of the psychics they got into the house. And you can tell.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And she turns around and she says, because Daniel Lutz has got a very different demeanor around her.
God, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
she's very motherly towards him.
Yes. She believes him.
And they
no
sit
one
down.
Believes him.
And she looks around and goes, "Does everyone here have faith in Christ or God?" And then Daniel Lutz steps up because he's always got to be the hard man. Goes, "Be honest, because I'm gonna call you out on it." And you're like, "What?"
At that point, in my room watching on YouTube, I went, "I don't believe in God, Mr. Lutz. I'm sorry, sir."
And then she's like, "I don't know if I should show you this then because it's disrespectful." And then they show it and goes, "This is the actual crucifix I've got." He gets into it with like a sound guy. And says like, "Oh, I'm just not sure. I've not been on the journey." And he goes, "All right." And you can tell he wants to be aggressive, but this guy is calm enough to kind of maneuver around that. He's like, "Look, I've just not had your experience. I'm still on my own journey."
Yes.
He didn't go, "No, mate, I'm getting paid $45 an hour to hold this stick so I can hear what you say."
But she says to him, so I don't know what purple old lady's name was, but she said, "You never did anything bad, did you, Daniel?" And then he looks at the camera and he sort of smirks. And then they start asking him about like, "Well, where did you go when you were 16 or 17?
This is another thing.
Well, and he misses a heartbeat, right? And it's almost why he tries to think of a lie. And he went, "I went to live in a desert." And you're like, where the fuck did you pull that from? Did you? That seems...
And that's biblical as well. That's the 40 days, 40 nights type thing.
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah, I was in the desert. So
Go on, Patrice.
It's easy to, live and, lived on people's couches. What, your friends' couches in the fucking desert? Well, and then, so that just becomes odd. But when you hear back the rest of his timeline, his mom lets him leave home at like 15, 16. So he has another like 4 or 5 years in this abusive thing. And he goes into it. He talks about, we'll kind of...
But can we just get back to the cross?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll go back to the crucifix. Because
she says, Okay, so we have a relic of the cross that Jesus was crucified on here. And I'm like, what? She's like, this is the actual wood from the cross. Like, what? Really? That wouldn't still be around. That was, I then fired up my calculator. That's 1,989-year-old wood. What did they Ron-seal that when he was done? What?
It's because she was saying like the reason why they were okay in the house is because they're baptized. That was her methodology of it, and she says, and they were, oh, so did you have the crucifixion in the house? She went, no, I didn't have it then.
But I had a bit of this dude's hair.
I got this
It's
dude's
the
hair.
same
He's
thing
called
as Jesus' cross.
Padre Pedro or something.
I don't know.
Padre Pedro.
The 6
He's a
minutes I
famous-
missed seems pivotal.
All right. So Padre Pedro, she says, is we should have Googled.
Yeah,
I know.
right.
I know. He is a famous, must have been a disciple-esque Christian leader. And she's got a lock of his hair, and she says, he came to me and said, do not go back there. You will die. And as weird as what it sounds of everything we spoke about, I've had a similar experience, which we had a gig coming up in Crawley recently. And I had an apparition. Oh, there you go, Rick. Do not fucking go back there. You will die there. Yeah, I've had moments where I went and did a gig at Eastbourne once. And I hadn't gigged in Eastbourne for a while. Not the Sunday night one. It's on the outskirts. I clarified it wasn't.
Yeah. No, I've done those outskirt ones.
And it was the weirdest thing because I walked into the room, I had to call my mate, and I walked in, I kind of recognized it, and I looked up and saw the ceiling, and I was like, people have died here. It was like Sin City, Marv, when he goes to the farm and he goes, people have died here the wrong way. and I looked at the ceiling, and I don't know what happened to me there, but I must have had an awful show the first time I did it there, because I was like, I recognize this fucking awful roof.
Oh, man. Well, poor Daniel, just while they're there with the Wetshire psychic, he is incredibly respectful of this woman. It's the only time in the whole documentary he's not angry. He only gets angry when anyone doesn't buy into what she's doing and he does the sign of the cross. So straight away then, I didn't realise how religious he was till that point. I thought he was a bit religious, but then I was like, oh my God. And
then I'm starting to piece together, because now I'm kind of believing that he believes it.
Exactly, right?
I'm at this point, and this is where it kind of comes fascinating to watch.
Yes.
And you're hearing questions, because that Laura's not daft. She's asking the right kind of questions, and going like, so they're saying there was a personality switch after the move.
Yeah.
And then they went, yeah, but so there was no kind of violence from George to you before you moved. And he's like, oh no, he beat the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
Before that was before and after. So it's like, all right, so this is going on before this is, and then it says the day that it all kicked off is, and they say women were charmed by the house where men became more aggressive. And you think, well, it's a waterfront property, and of course they got to be happier. But
it's Ocean Avenue. What a great address.
And they say the day that they had to flee and leave that house, they were taking down Christmas decorations. So it was January 6th. They have a word for what day it is. The Christian word is the reason why they do it. 6 days after fucking...
It's called Epiphany.
The Epiphany Day, right? Which is a weird day that they decide to leave. But it's almost as if they're writing a story for it. And I was thinking, if you've got an abusive stepdad, and what kind of triggers could set off a huge turn of events in the house of violence, decorating would be fucking up there with me.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the day I think he gets his hand smashed.
Yeah, maybe. That poor kid, right? Because effectively you're watching a bloke fall apart. That's what you're doing. And he said, look, I've stopped trying to persuade people that I was possessed. What's the point? He goes, I know it happened. Nobody believes me, but I know it happened. Although the psychic believes him, yeah. But it's so intense. I mean, it's really fucking intense. And this was made, what, 9 years ago? Or is it 11 years ago? What's going on with my brain lately? I'm losing my
But this
brain.
is where the reconstructed reality thing really plays in for me. I found interesting to see. And again, if this did happen, I can't apologize enough. But I think it's an abused child who's
Sorry.
because there is more discussion on George Lutz than there is the fucking demon that smashed his fingers and then whacked around.
Yeah. Well, they brought
the kitchen.
They brought in another expert, and she was. And again, sorry, I didn't make a note of her name, but she was saying, "Look, I believe that he believes that this all happened to him, and that all of those experiences were real, because the way that memory works is we only remember about 10 to 20%, and then we fill in the blanks." And she said, "So if it's suggested to you," and she goes, "and we've done this in experiments. These are well-known experiments. It's the power of, so when you visualize, like they got people to practice shooting basketball hoops, and they got people to play it over in their mind. It was as if they had done it.
Yeah.
And they had just as much accuracy after doing that for 30 days as the people who actually practice doing it. It's the power of the mind. The mind is a powerful thing." And she says, yeah, he's constructed this stuff, is what I believe.
Because the stories don't make a whole heap of sense. Like they're saying, so he goes downstairs when he's got his fingers crushed to the bone. His hand is mushed. Yeah. So he goes downstairs, and it's not you're 10 years old. You'll be fucking screaming for a start. I don't care how hard you say your persona is now. You'd be beyond consolable. And he's downstairs with his mum after this happened, and she's wrapping her hand, and then the door opened, a spirit came in, sat in the chair and looked at them, and then Laura's trying to stop and go, so what happened then? And he's getting arsey at that question, because when, like, we've had a chat recently, like when a story's a neural pathway in your mind, you can't veer off without getting, frustrated, or it pokes holes out at maybe, and it becomes closer to the truth. But going, yeah, well, she's fixing my hand, so we're looking at it, and she looks back at me, and then she's doing the hand, and we look back, and the thing's gone. If someone comes into the room, you gotta you bounce. Like, okay, oh, we go. Like,
a demon. He said, George could move objects with his mind, and he saw it.
Oh yeah, this was again. So they go, and George has all these, because this is there is some really aggressive psychic type people, and you think they're debunking it, but they're not. They're saying George's occult behavior woke something up in the house. Yeah, and they're yelling, they're shouting over Laura on it. Like, that's not good interviewing.
Well, they're enforcing. They're saying to Daniel, "No, go on, tell us more." Because that might all be true, Daniel. He's like, it fucking is true. He said him and his brother shared a levitation experience. Now, I do have some genuine experience of this. I have had a out-of-body experience.
I know, but Matt, you took a shit ton of drugs back in the day, pal.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. They could have roofied him, right?
I think the suggestibility, because they're saying he has books on mind control. He has the books on hypnotism is a big one.
Yes.
And then when he's calmly saying that he has the power of telekinesis, and he's just like, I walked into the garage once, and then I walked into the garage. They didn't know I was there. How do you walk into a garage without someone fucking noticing you? And then he could pick up a wrench without picking it up, and then once he had it, he could move it.
Although it took him quite a while to put it down.
Yeah, it took a few. That's the thing about moving things with your mind. It takes ages. Ages.
Well, the paperwork, Rick. That's just... He then said, and this this tickled me a bit. He went, yeah, I became hyper aggressive. Became? No, you are hyper aggressive. In fact, hyper aggressive is where you start from. Yeah. He said he was he ran away so much. No, his parents went on they went on a tour because they were promoting their books.
Hold your horses. We've got just a little bit before that.
Oh,
So
okay.
they put all the psychics and stuff in the rooms. Reporters are with them. Now, the psychics and the reporters have two very different tones of fucking voice about it, don't they? They're very remarkably different, the tones of voices between the news reporters, the state hour, and the psychics.
Because the news reporter has to work again, right? And be legitimate.
Yeah. No. A news reporter has work. The psychic's trying to get work. It's the fucking difference. And then they show you pictures. And there's one picture where there's like a child's face.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, go on.
Now, I don't know if they've slipped that in there after the fact and went, oh, yeah, this is one of the ones you took.
Oh, of the kid in the corner at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, that's one.
Why have you brought that back into my head? Fuck. Yes.
So that's another.
Thanks.
Ooh, yeah, that's a little. That is a little bit fucking creepy. My mate, who we're gonna get to do the whole horror thing. He was. I'll leave it to him because I'm trying to get him to tell his horror stories and all that kind of shit. So we'll leave it for that. But
that is going to be the ultimate specialist Patreon, possibly real episode that we put out.
Yeah, so we're basically to do room 237. Matt has to watch The Shining, and we get to do a watch along.
I do not watch horror films. Even this, I push back on. Rick can normally suggest something, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And he suggested this. I'm like, no, sounds scary. No, and you were like, no, it's not scary. It's about this kid, and I'm like, sounds scary.
I thought it was about the hoodwink. Honestly, thought it was about the hoodwink.
And then you sold it to me, and when it started, I went, he's fucking lied to me. he's used his words and he's lied. But then saying that, I did ask for you to find someone who's a bit Timothy Treadwell, and you fucking nailed it. So, yeah. But this poor man was a lot more damaged than Timothy Treadwell. And on this one, we find out why he's damaged. You didn't find out with Treadwell, right?
I'll tell you, there was one thing, just to go back to the how, because there's only really three interviews they could sit him down for, so it's
yeah.
But like, if you're interested in the Amityville, this is worth checking out. It's interesting, and just a depiction of like just a human mind as well.
Yes.
That psychic lady's house, the fucking roosters that they have.
What? Did I miss the big? What happened in those 6 minutes? I was asleep. No, I'm watching this.
And then, the cockerel is crowing 3 times. That's how religious the fuck it is.
But both the cats came running in. Right? They're like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Is that next door's garden?" I'm like, "No, that can't be on the document." What?
And then the psychics that are arguing with Laura, I will say this, okay? If you're a true psychic, you know you don't have to wear a fucking turtleneck, right? But when you see them both there dressed as slam poets, you're like, I think you're trying to get something across here, pal. You had to know he was going to wear the same thing because your mate's wearing the exact same fucking top.
So his parents did a movie tour, pushing the book and stuff, and they put him into a Catholic church for a few months, and they committed exorcisms on him. And to use his words, he had the shit beaten out of him by priests. That sounds very believable. I don't reckon he made that up. I felt for him. I was like, this kid's fucking been
And it's the fact they're on a book tour. Do you know what I mean? This was a calculated financial move.
Yeah.
This is a guy whose business was failing. There was a foreclosure on the house, which they then say, how do they foreclose after 28 days or stuff like that? But he may have just bought it with money he didn't have. And then,
Yeah, the check bounced. Yep.
They left everything there, which was a good touch.
But saying that, I then thought about this. You know, I don't know the character's name, but Randy Quaid in Independence Day. I told
president?
You. No, he's the
the
one who was abducted. Yeah. I told you.
One of the most offensive depictions of a Jewish man ever.
No, the No, the drunk.
Oh shit! From Kingpin, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Like, hey boys,
Yeah,
I'm back.
Him.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, fuck, what if Daniel Lutz is him? What if he's Randy Quaid from Independence Day? And I'm like, no, that's all made up too. No.
Yeah. They did stuff to him.
Yeah. And then the documentary, it gets fucking scary with one question.
Oh, wait there. We'll build to that because I know which one you're coming to, but that gets heated. So they start to ask the questions you're screaming in your mind. Basically, they start to say did you doubt yourself? They've already had the expert pop in with a off camera. Danny's not there when the expert's talking about reconstructed realities.
No.
And then he talks about George believed, and he could basically mind control and shit like that he's saying. He was proper about the occult. So he's got a good knowledge of the business of this stuff and what stories sell for George. Again, it's kind of adding to all this shit. Thought projection, telekinesis. But
don't forget, he was in the military as well, right? They studied that shit in the military. You ever read the Men Who Stare at Goats? That covers all of that. They've looked into this stuff. MK Ultra is real. Right? They've looked at that sort of insane stuff that we say is insane now, but...
do you know when he's telling the story about seeing the wrench? The story about seeing the wrenches move.
Yeah.
There you go. But what you would do is you would attach a truth to a massive lie, and you would concentrate on the truth. I met such and such. Do you know he drove a Peugeot 106? They got 1.6 liters. And it was just the formula to it was just insanity. And he does this because when he talks about the wrenches thing, and he goes, and I had a doctor's appointment that night. I told them the whole story, and he wrote it down in a pad. That's in a doctor's filing cabinet somewhere. It's like, I did. So did he pick up wrenches with other stuff then? Like, do you think he moved your bed with your mind?
You need to ask the doctor. I told him everything. Well, just tell us, because we're filming this. And you did agree to be in the documentary, which is about you.
And it's funny because whenever he's telling a story, right, and he's given a dialogue between his mother and him, you have to keep reminding yourself that he's 10 years old when he's claiming to say this, because the rhetoric he's using within the dialogue is of a 40-year-old divorced man with kids.
Yeah. He does say, though, the person you're speaking to now is the outer shell that's trying to protect the 10-year-old boy that lives within me. So he understands the psychoanalysis language. And you get the impression from him, as aggressive as he is, that he's not a dumb man, right? He does...
No,
he's
not sure.
By a long shot, you're like, okay, well, you're not fucking dumb, right? You clearly understand it. And the way he tackles questions, you can tell this guy has been sparring all his life. Everything for him is an argument. So when someone hits him with an argument, he's really good at arguing back. Let me tell you what you've said there. Well, you answer my question.
Yeah, you have to deal with my level of aggression, which backs people off.
Yeah.
They go 1 to fucking 9 very quickly, so you don't ask your 7th or 8th question. You're on thin ice, which is nurture. Like that. That's exactly how they describe George Lutz. Do you know what I mean? That's the world he grew up in.
Yes.
But there is a point when he's in the car with Laura, and he's got his glasses down by his nose, talking. Like he's got the shades. He's been playing the guitar again. And he's just rattling off like, I do believe there is evil in this world, and that takes whatever form it chooses to take. There is an evil. And she has a look on her face that I saw in Bobby Fischer when that guy is interviewing at the end of Iceland. And he's just rattling all of it. You can tell they've had to cut a lot of stuff out of this and all these chats. And she is literally just driving going, yeah, that's the devil. That's very nice. So, yeah. Right, so then it comes to the point I think you've been wanting to talk about, because
this is it. This is the end, and this
is as prickly as it gets as a person.
Yeah, this was really uncomfortable. And he said, So this is Eric Walter, the director, says to Mr. Lutz, would you submit to a lie detector test?
Polygraph, yeah. Because they use the word polygraph because, again, you soften all your words around these people.
Of course you do. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And he said, yeah, would you submit to a polygraph? Daniel puts in an argument that, as hyper-aggressive as it is, it's a fair fucking argument. And he goes, well, let me answer your question, whatever question.
Because he's thought about these answers, and to me, this answer is nonsensical. Right? He just hoped they back off.
Yeah. And then he says to him, and I think this is what makes him back off a little bit, but he does get a bit sarky. And Daniel says, I am going to have words with you after this. Fucking hell. When did it get all East End?
Because the first thing that happens, he goes, is there something that this little metal device will tell you that I'm not? And he went, well, yeah. It'll let you... And he went,
it would tell me if you're polygraphing.
Like, don't... Yeah. And the guy's like, yeah, well, I'm speaking for other people. And he went, don't pull this bullshit with me. I'm going to have words with you after this.
It was fucking terrifying.
Yeah. And he's done after that. He slouches back, he lights a cigarette, and that's the end of the documentary. That's it. That's done.
Would a machine validate your belief in my words?
Well, if it showed that your heart rate depicted you were lying, it would help reinforce them.
But mate, I think you picked well. It was a genuinely. I know I had to be strong-armed into watching it, but I really enjoyed it. I must admit, I really enjoyed it. Just watching this poor man. It was almost there for the grace of God go I could feel some of his pain. I really could. Like, I fully believe that he's not in on some kind of hoodwink. I think it is akin to abducted in plain sight. Yes.
Like, this kid believed that there was fucking aliens coming. If she didn't have that eureka moment where someone took her to her side and explained, this is why this happened, this is why that happened. Yeah. Because if it did happen like that, the mother doesn't go on a year-long fucking book tour. Do you know what I mean? They don't cherry pick who comes and gets the story from them.
Yeah. Yeah, she was taking the fella out of the equation so he couldn't hurt her boys anymore, right?
I think it was a money thing, because they took another 4 or 5 years to get divorced. Like, they were still together, but they were in this then. And it's abusive. Like, people don't leave abusive relationships easily. There's no.
No, I guess
it's hard to fucking hold that against it, because people are in cycles, and the abused blame themselves and then think they deserve it, and all kinds of things like that. And it sounds like this guy was a grade A fucking piece of shit. Yes. So getting away from that, and then your money's tied into all this fucking story.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt for him in the end. I really felt for him. I wanted to give him a hug, but I also don't want to go near him in case he...
Yeah, I don't think he would have liked that.
Punch me in the face.
Are you checking my pulse?
And then at the end, I stay to the end credits. The film is dedicated to his mum, Kathleen. So he obviously did have words. And
the other siblings refused to be interviewed.
Yeah, but he obviously did have words, and this is how you're going to pay for this, Eric. Dedicate this to my mum. Right, man, give us a score. Let's wrap this one up.
I'm giving this a fun little 3.5. I wanted the full story on what the Lutzes did. Again, it came about the parental abuse. There was very little on the DeFeos. There was very little on the other iconography of the Amityville, which I was kind of looking for, because I found it interesting how that story was supposed to be manipulated. But then you find what a real victim of this. Now, the DeVille family, obviously victims of what had happened previously, but this family is just scarred. Like, it's unbelievably fucking...
Yeah.
There's people living in that house today. Do you know they have to... Yeah. They I think they changed the road name so tourists would stop coming up and trying to get into the fucking Amityville house.
Yeah, and they changed the numbers. Yeah. Yeah, so people just don't...
Imagine, I'm not having number 13 on mine. You can fuck off, like.
Yeah.
No chance of you putting that on me bins.
Fucking strange, isn't it? I'm going to give this a healthy 4, because It was just fascinating looking at somebody's psyche. It really was. It was.
There was a
little bit
difference.
soul destroying.
Yeah, there is a difference in some of the documentaries we watch where they don't sort of interview psychics and give them credibility. I don't think that's worthwhile.
I might have to, now there's time. I might have to go back and watch those 6 minutes.
This microphone is the microphone that Moses used.
Come on, Red Sea parts. I've got to do a tight 20 over there in a minute.
Don't gig in Bethlehem.
It's the Crawley of Israel. So thank you very much for joining us on our 1 year birthday. Also, a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. They don't just support us financially. More than that, they actually support us. What's the word I'm after? Not morally. What's the word when they just keep you going? You know, when you have a bad day and then one of them will send you a message. Whatever that is. I'm losing my words.
Hey, they are fucking awesome. Like,
they are awesome.
Everyone that listens is appreciated, but the people who have, they should really be on the show, if anything.
I think they should. Yeah, absolutely. They pick you up after a bad day, and yeah, sometimes you're like, oh God, I've got to do this, and then they're like, hey, and you're like, oh God, of course, I love doing this. Yeah,
I think you're projecting.
What am I doing?
I mean, this is.
I'm Daniel Lutz. So thank you, Patreon listeners. Thank you, normal listeners. If you want to join our Patreon, it's very, very simple. Go to Patreon. Go to the link in the show notes. You can't search for us on Patreon because we swear.
Matt says we're not suitable for under 18s.
Yeah. So
in case the man comes after us. All the stuff available to under 18s online. It's us. It's us that's the problem. Let's make us difficult to market.
So, come join our Patreon. The Macmillian stuff that we're currently releasing an episode at a time. Again, I'm loving Macmillians. And what's coming up is Making a Murderer, which I'm currently in the middle of. And yeah.
I'm so happy. That was meant to be the anniversary show, and then we made the rule of series can't really bombard people's timelines. So Making a Murderer, fucking Macmillians, The Jinx, really good episodes, which I hope more people get to listen to. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, so come on board with the Patreon. It's great fun, and it really does help support the podcast because this shit costs money. So thank you very much for joining us. That is what's that? 4, 5, 6, 7.5. That is, you can tell it's late at night as well, can't you? So that is 7.5 for my Amityville
Since it's
Horror.
been 1 year, what's the top 5 we've done? If you've got that stat nearby by any chance,
or
have you done them in a spreadsheet without a total?
I can tell you that.
Oh, and just while Matt's doing maths, we've got to give Matt a big thank you because this would not exist without this fucking
Thanks, mate. Right back at you.
Absolute machine.
This is when we set it up. Rick said, "Well, look, you're probably going to do a bit more of the work because I know I'm a bit lazy." And I went, "Nope, we're 50-50 all the way, buddy." Or is it just it creates grief? Right, what are we after here? We're after what the highest scores.
Yeah, the top. If we give a top 5 if you're checking out our 1 year anniversary on what's our current top 5 of documentaries as voted by Rick and Matt, and I want this to be bigger than my dream is that people go, oh, what a disgusting documentaries give it, like a Rotten Tomatoes thing.
Oh, okay.
And then they go, all right, but what did Rick give it? And go, all right, I'm not watching it.
Yeah. The ones that are scored high.
Looks like you got neck problems. Like your screen is so unnaturally high right now where you look up to type.
So the top 5 for 2021 are Jonestown, Paradise Lost, Searching for Sugar Man. Both of those got 9.5. And Game Changers also got 9.5. And then in 2020, it was Grizzly Man with a 9, Wrestling with Shadows, Abducted in Plain Sight, Team Foxcatcher, American Murderer, The Family Next Door, and West of Memphis. They're all 9s.
What did Jigs get?
10. No, 9.
Oh, because you give it a 4.
Yeah, because I was quite pissed off because it didn't have an ending.
It did have an ending.
It's going on. It's live on. Again, thanks to one of our Patreon fans. Hey, do you know this is live currently? It's been shown. That trial's been shown live on YouTube. What a time to be alive. Right, let's wrap it up, Rick. Let's wrap it up.
All right, so this is coming out the week of Matt Will's solo show. Check him out, Faversham Fringe. As it stands, we are currently doing a shit ton of gigs if you're in the Southwest for one-off comedy. If you check out their Facebook page, and if you'd like to see us, drop us a message and we'll see which one we're at.
I've had a big shout out to all I've ever been looking for is someone to make me laugh, and I've found another one. I keep finding these people, and I think I found one of the best ever. So thanks, Rick. That's been a blast, man. 1 year.
Oh, you're talking about me? I thought you were talking about Daniel Lutz. Cheers, Daniel. Thanks for the laughs, man.
Love you, Dad. Right, I'll see you later. Ta-ta.
All right, take it easy.